All right, Chris, this time I think we got it. Thank you for hanging
That
out with
was a
me. Oh
good.
my gosh. How are you doing today?
Yeah, very good. Thanks. Very good.
Man, we have had all kinds of snafus. I have revealed myself as a technological noob, at least in regarding Zoom, but I think we got it figured out. So you're going to hang out with me today. We're going to talk about some patient management stuff. I have a few questions I may ask you at the end if we have time. First, you're in England, right?
Yeah, yeah. Just outside London.
Very cool. I went on a chiropractic mission trip years ago to Jamaica, and I was told then that I had a nice accent, which is like the only time in my life I've ever been told that. Now, I sounded
I think
stupid
you
to
have a nice
me.
accent.
Well, no, I sounded dumb to me still. I don't, you sound cool, which you probably sound normal to yourself. I sound dumb. So I'm envious of your accent.
I love accents. I had to learn a while ago that being the kind of person I am, impersonating them didn't always go down as well as I'd hoped. Yeah, it's always good fun chatting with people from different locations. That's what I love with everything being online now and podcasts is like the conversations you can have across the world. It's very cool.
Yeah, it actually is really amazing. Like that's something I noticed with my podcast is that, someone that I've lived in the Midwest in the US my whole life, and I'm not very interesting in terms of travel. And so to interact with people in Australia and in England and even over in some Asian countries and stuff, and people that email me, and it's just weird to me because I would never have thought that someone like me that's really kind of sheltered, someone like me that's to have that kind of reach, even if it's just one or two people here and there. I do find it
Yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. Same.
So tell me this, just to kind of get some context, because I do think that some like perspective does matter in terms of where someone's coming from. Um, as far as what you know about like being a chiropractor in the United States versus being a chiropractor in like the UK and where you're at, like what are some of the differences that you kind of know right away that stand out to you?
So, I mean, the one that I'm most aware of is the insurance you guys have to deal with. The vast majority of UK practices are what you guys would call a cash practice.
Yeah.
So it's private healthcare. People just come and pay us. Now, some places bill insurers, they have that relationship with them. The majority of us, we just say the patient pays cash.
Yeah.
We give them receipts and they then claim back from the insurance company. So it's nice in that respect because this whole billing coding thing, I hear you guys talk about, and I just think that sounds horrible. I'd
I
hate
don't
to.
ever, yeah, I don't ever talk about it because it's not my bag. I mean, when I
Yeah,
talk about business and marketing with people, like I stay away from that stuff because the clinical
yeah,
stuff,
it's a whole
yeah,
specialism, right? Isn't it? Yeah,
yeah,
I was
it's
trying
a
to
nightmare.
Mike Massey about it, and obviously
Yeah.
he's into that. But yeah, so we don't have to deal with any of that. So we kind of operate a little bit more outside, I suppose, in a way that we're not necessarily more alternative. I think we're pretty alternative for most people, US and UK, but we have a bit more of that independence that we can practice a bit more the way we want. We don't have to worry about, am I going to treat this patient and then find out their insurance company's not going to pay me?
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest difference. I would say the extremes of the profession, I think there's a little bit more extremes in the States generally. The spectrum of how people choose to practice different
Yeah.
styles, different philosophies, all of that. We have all that here. I think it's just the tail ends go a little bit further out in the US.
Yeah. That makes sense.
That might just be my perspective, though. I don't know how accurate that is. Those would be the main differences, I think, really. Yeah, it's that cash practice insurance thing is one of the biggest ones, really.
I've actually always thought to myself that the United States would be better off if everybody was on the same playing field. Kind of, it's like whether if all the insurance decided to do something in particular, or if none of the insurance accepted chiropractic anymore, like it seems like it would simplify things from an administrative standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, from a messaging standpoint, just because people know they know what they're, if they're going to have to pay for it out of pocket, they know that if they're going to get 20 or 30 bucks reimbursed to them, then they know that. Like it just, I think that if we could simplify things in the US, it would be better. But
I still don't understand what a copay is. I've been hearing about that or deductibles for years. I still don't quite
I don't want to get into it. Like it's so like that's such a that would make this so boring. Like I would, you would see my eyes roll back in my head and be like,
Two chiropractors talking about billing and insurance that they don't really understand.
dude, Massey loves that stuff, like notes and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And there are people that teach all kinds of things about that. And I have no interest. I don't find it interesting. I am much more interested in talking about people, which I love. I love the human element of what we do as chiropractors. You're also, and I'm just going to kind of make this note, you're a second generation chiropractor, right?
Yeah. That was a chiro.
Yeah. And so what are you aware of? Because like I was a first gen, kind of started everything on my own. Like, how much are you aware of like how your path is different than someone who doesn't have that advantage?
Yeah, I mean, it gave me a big advantage early on. In that I was the weird kid at primary school who was 5 years old going, I want to be a chiropractor, like not an astronaut or something like that. So I always knew I wanted to do it. I looked at medicine and law for a little bit, but didn't grab me. And I worked in the family business on the front desk throughout my teens. So I had a lot of exposure early on to seeing the difference it can make for people, seeing the way people practiced. But one of the key messages I got right from them was like, right, the communication really matters. Like even me as a teenager on the front desk, like my parents were like, you got to be presentable, you got to communicate well. If somebody comes out saying X, Y, Z, you got to know how to manage that. So I had that. And then, going through college, that would kind of expose me to the wider world of chiropractic a little bit. Like I knew of its roots, and I knew of, there was it was traditionally more vitalistic, but my dad was fairly MSK based. That's what I figured most chiros were.
Yeah.
And then that was our education as well. And then you kind of come out and you meet other chiropractors, you go, oh, okay, this is a bit of a broader church than I realized, and people have strong views on other sides. And I ping-ponged about that for a little bit. I sort of went, I'm this evidence-based. No, I'm going to be vitalistic. No, I'm going to be this or that. But yeah, I think it was that the communication side was something that I was fortunate enough to have a grounding in early on. And then when I came out, really decided to focus on that. Hopefully not at the expense of other skills, but and I would talk to people who've been out a little while, and the way they would talk about their interactions with patients, sometimes I'd be a little bit like, oh, is that like, that's how you would do it? Like, I don't
why
know
would you
if
do
I go
that?
about it. Yeah. What, like, do you think that's working?
That's such a great backhanded question.
I would not ask them that. Because the other thing as well, I think, was that it gave me, I've always been like a junior to senior chiropractors. Like I was a little kid and dad was a chiro. And then I think that helped, the Dunning-Kruger kicks in when you're a student, when you graduate a little bit and you start getting a little bit on your high horse and we're going to be better than the previous generations and this kind of thing. And that kind of helped keep me grounded. And so I came out and, my chiropractor throughout college, she's much more vitalistic than I am, but I knew her and I trusted her and I knew she was a decent person, and we could disagree on this stuff, but it really helped me to go, just because we might think different things, that doesn't mean that I can't learn from this person. It doesn't mean that I know more than her about this or that. And to this day, our theories of chiropractic and what we do are completely different, but she's still the one who takes care of my daughter. So I think it kind of helped me realize, like, I didn't get quite as big a head as I could. Now that happened at times. Like, it's not like I never got a bit big for my boots and started going, oh, this and that, and that's wrong, and that's wrong.
I knew way more back then than I know now. Like I was brilliant.
I so miss it. It was great when you knew everything, right? Like when there wasn't this nuance and gray areas and uncertainty. But I think that was one of the big things that definitely kind of helped me. And also just sort of seeing, like, you can have a successful practice and you can really love what you do and it can work well and it can, you can have a good income. You can have a nice life through chiropractic. It can be something that really, really works well. I know some people, there's a lot of students and new grads I talk to now, they're like, I just feel like I've got to sell my soul to be successful. And it's like, no.
Yeah, I run into that a lot.
You can sell your soul to be successful, but I would argue that's not success. But yeah, I'm sure you hear that all the time as well. It's this idea of you're either going to eat well or sleep well. Like I knew that there was a way of doing it that you could really have a thriving practice that you loved and felt good and helped people. So
my response
sometimes.
Yeah, one of the things that I tell people all the time is I'm just naive enough to believe that you can help a lot of people and make a good living at the same time. Like I think that Now, I do think that there are ways to cut corners and make some money that, faster if
Mm.
you are going to be dishonest. But
Well, yeah, there's quick fixes and stuff. Yeah.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. The idea of helping a lot of people and enjoying your business and, making a good living. Like, I don't think that those things have to you don't have to sacrifice one for the other.
No, no. I think it's that whole. It's a bit like Cairo philosophy, right? People feel like it's black or white. You've got to pick your side. It's like, no, that's you really don't have to.
So you had a leg up with the communication because you got to see it and you had a good example, and that's so incredibly important. Because what's interesting at chiropractic is that whether your dad's a chiropractor or not, we have a tendency to think that chiropractic is whatever our first exposure is to chiropractic.
Mm.
So it's like, if somebody's very vitalistic, then we just go into chiropractic college thinking that's what it is. And if someone's more musculoskeletal, then we think that's what it is. And I do think that one of the thing that you communicated, and I know this is kind of right in your wheelhouse, the people management part of it, I don't think it's thought about. It's not discussed. It's not any part of the curriculum, because even business and marketing, which is one of my pet peeves, it's like, hey, you're ill-equipped to do business and marketing. Even that, at least you might have one business class, even if it sucks or whatever.
Yeah,
But
yeah. We get a business plan at the
yeah,
uni.
yeah, it's great. But the thing that's probably even more lacking is just the dealing with people.
Mm.
That it's so difficult, and it's such an important part of practice. And why do you think that it's so hard? Like, I mean, I know for you it maybe not have been because you had those good examples, but why is that such a blindsiding thing for the average chiropractor that comes out of school?
I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that. I could probably go in a lot of different directions. I think some of the big ones, I think a lot of people get into chiropractic to fix people. They think, I'm going to fix this spine. It's a bit like a mechanic, right?
Yeah.
And then the problem is you graduate and you find out these spines have owners, and really you have to deal with the owner. And
100%.
if you can't get the owner on board, then it doesn't matter what you think you can do to the spine. Never mind how complex that system it's embedded in.
It's a participation sport.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of, and particularly, and that's true for a lot of experienced chiropractors. That's true for chiros in all walks. And I think that's the example a lot of us see and a lot of us think. So we don't even recognize that's important at the start. And I don't want to knock on the colleges at all. They do a really, really great job, but they can't fit everything in.
Sure.
I remember one of my tutors saying this to me. He's like, this course is not going to teach you how to be a chiropractor. This course is going to teach you to go and be safe enough to get out in the real world and spend several years in practice learning what it is to be a chiropractor.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, to get the people management skills in there as well, like they've crammed so much in there. And yet you can be really bad at managing people, but still be safe. So
yeah,
if you're going to get people to be safe to go and learn, I guess it's not as much of a priority. And I think it's not thought of a lot. I think that the Dunning-Kruger effect that kicks in for all of us is there. Like, once people get out and patients come back for more than 1 or 2 sessions and they feel like the diary's filling up, they go, oh, I've got it made. So I love working with new grads. I do a lot of work with new grads because they really know they don't know anything.
Yeah.
And they're really keen to learn. And then I find when they've been out sort of 3, 5, 7, 8 years, I often don't hear from them because they know all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then some of them later on realize, oh, yeah, maybe I didn't know as much as I thought. Maybe I've come down from that initial peak of I know everything. The ones who have a real growth mindset and want to succeed and do their best. So and they're really fun to work with as well because they're just like picking stuff up and running with it. But I think it's not really emphasized. And there's this idea. I would argue this is a myth. Like, I understand where it comes from, but this idea that if you take care of your patients, they'll take care of you. Like, just do a good job and sort them out and you'll be busy.
Yeah, we'll file that under bad marketing advice.
Yeah, but I hear that, and I hear it from people I love and respect. And I
it's
hear
not
it
true.
from the ones who are they're naturally charismatic and they're naturally good with people. So really, they've got that stuff pretty, we can all improve, but they've got good enough that people generally like them. So yeah, if they then get that person results, generally they're fairly successful in practice. And they just go, oh, all I have to do is get results. And that's all you have to do. Which, if you aren't naturally a very charismatic person, you don't already have all those skills. It's like, no, we're teaching somebody to drive by sticking them on the motorway and going, oh yeah, well, like the getting the car started, that's easy. You've just got to go down that road. Like, it's bad advice. And
we
it's
often,
but it's from people who don't understand what that new graduate's position is in a lot of the time.
I think a lot of people that, because the chiropractors, it's not really their job to really think about and boil down why they're successful. So like if somebody shows up, like even your dad, like if you're going to spend time with your dad and you're going to be like, hey, what makes this work? It's not really his job is to take care of people and to, run his business. It's not really his job to dissect it and teach it to someone else, which is a different skill set. And
Oh,
so
completely. Yeah, yeah.
oftentimes when you have someone who's giving these pieces of advice, what I would say is they're not being malicious, but they probably are under the assumption that their success is much more simple than what it really is, where it's like 1 + 1 = 2. And it's like, no, this is a very complex equation when you're dealing with people and you're dealing with success. And the interesting thing about that equation is that a lot of people arrive at the right answer going a bunch of different combination of things. And because you might have a strength with people, but maybe not be as strong clinically. And there might be someone who's really good clinically and they're not so good with people, but they also have good networking skills because they built those relationships with other professionals that don't care that they're not good with people. And so it's like, there's all of these different ways that you can kind of get to that point. And it is a mistake, even from a practice management or from a mentoring standpoint, to look at the way that, and I try to do this with my Next Step members and the people that I try to help, even the podcasting. I try to be very careful to say, well, this is what I did. So this is how you were successful. When
look, this worked for me, but that's just within my lens of experience.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the same thing when you get advice like that. It's someone really focusing on something that made a difference in their practice that probably will make a difference in somebody else's practice. But is it the only thing? No, when you see someone that's successful, it's not one thing. They're just, it just isn't. It can't possibly be.
And it's the same thing with patients. It's like, right, why did that patient get better? I'm like, because I delivered a really good adjustment at that L5 side posture. It's like, that's a necessary part of it, sure, but there's so many other factors at play, and if you don't know those, you're not going to credit them if you're doing them automatically well. And completely, like you said, like teaching something, it's a whole other skill set. I say this we often take on new graduates when they join the practice. And I tell them, look, I've spent a long time dissecting how I communicate and how I manage patients. And I can teach you that. I've spent a long time working out how that works and why you might need to apply it differently. Like adjusting, like every chiropractor, I think I'm a pretty good adjuster. I think I'm pretty good. But I'm at best, I'm at that unconscious competence level where it's like, I don't really know how I do it. And I would try and teach them stuff. And I'd be like, it's like that. But just better, which is useless advice. So I now say, look, we're going to outsource that. We're going to bring people in to train that, or we're going to take you to seminars. Like, I'm going to get you in front of people who know how to teach adjusting. Because
I was always very aware of the fact that I wasn't a good teacher in terms of adjusting. I felt very good and very competent with what I did, but I did a lot of knee, chest, upper cervical, and knee, chest, upper cervical is taught by, it was invented by and taught by short people. Well, I'm pushing 6'4". So like when I stand over someone in a knee chest table, I have to adjust my body to get the angles correctly. So I would tell people if ever somebody ever watched me adjust that way, I'd be like, I do not do what I do unless you are as tall as me, because I have leverage that you don't have. So I can kind of get away with doing some things, not the way that you would teach someone smaller. And I also have to change my body to get in the right position because I'm too tall to do this the way that it's being taught. But I would have been a terrible person to learn from unless you happen to be as tall as me or
it's
taller.
funny you mention that, because I'm 6 foot, and my the 4 associates in this practice that I see patients in are all young, slight females who are about between 5'2" and 5'5". Like it's I have a completely different build to them. So there's that whole factor as well, even if I knew how to teach.
And the interesting thing about that, for anybody that's listening that's smaller, being smaller doesn't mean that you can't adjust. Like being smaller means that the mechanics of it and the angles and all of the stuff that is incredibly important become more important for you because you don't have the physical leverage that someone bigger has.
Can't get lazy.
You can be sloppy. If you're bigger, you can be sloppy and still kind of get it to work. The
Yeah.
smaller you are, the more precise you have to be. And, but if you're real big, I mean, if you're 6'7", 270, and you're teaching somebody how to adjust, it's like, that guy's getting away with stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, he's huge.
He's
So,
using what he's got. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, which is fine.
Yeah.
So tell me this, you've used the word patient-centered. It's like I almost overused sometimes, I think. And
Oh,
then,
completely. Yeah.
yeah. And because I don't know that it's well defined. I used to use the term relationship centered because my thought was you're trying to maintain the doctor-patient relationship over a long period of time. So the way you're communicating with patients, the way you're doing recommendations, the way you're doing your marketing, all of it is relationship centered, because what true longevity and success is with a patient is maintaining the doctor-patient relationship over a long period of time.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of like patient centered, like what do you consider that? Like, kind of what is your thought around that? And maybe what some people think that it is, that it's maybe not so much.
Yeah. So it's I'm considering a rebrand from patient-centered training, specifically because it is such a buzzword and everybody uses it now. So when you see relationship-centered training, I stole that from you because that's a much better way of putting it. I think for me, that's a really good definition of having that trusting relationship over time, and a relationship where the patient is empowered. It's not like, because the easy thing to define is doctor-centered, where it's all about us and our practice and how we want to do it. And obviously, giving patients advice that suits us more than them is unethical. We don't need to explain that. People get that. But in terms of, the way, like, are you doing this because at some level you're being the hero?
Yeah.
Like, like Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey. I always talk about that as the patient's the hero. We're just the guide. Yep. We're like Obi-Wan Kenobi, who can step in,
yep,
give them the skill. And that doesn't mean that we just give them some exercise and advice and send them off on their way. But it's about empowering that person, and also to make sure that they're getting their goals. Because I think a lot of it, I did this for years. I would see a patient, they'd come in and I'd hear them talk about their problem. And I would go, okay, your goal is to be free of pain. Because I naively thought that they're telling me they want to get rid of back pain. Their goal is back pain relief.
Yeah.
And then I would think, okay, but my goal for you is to have a biomechanically perfect spine or an interference-free nervous, whatever it is.
Yeah.
We have what we want for them, and we know better because we're the experts.
You Jedi mind trick them. You go,
yeah, these
are not the problems you're trying to fix.
Exactly. And then your report of findings becomes a sales pitch. And it's an altruistic, well-meaning, fairly ethical sales pitch. I'm now going to convince you to want something that you don't actually want.
Yeah.
And that's really, really hard. It's very hard to instill desire in somebody for something they don't already want.
The thing that's really frustrating to me about that is that when you go into a situation, interaction with a patient, and you've defined the goals already, you don't listen. Your ears shut off.
You know better.
You no longer listen. And it just sabotages everything from that point forward.
Completely. And I did that. I got good at it, like I had my road to recovery chart, and patients would stick with the plans fairly well. But I always noticed going into report findings, there's that slight feeling in my stomach of, I'm slightly concerned they're going to think I'm a salesman here, or I'm slightly concerned they're going to think that I'm recommending this because it's all about the money, whatever it was, because I knew I was having to convince them of something. And truly patient-centered work for me is it's all driven around their goals. It's finding out, what do they really want? Not pain relief, but what's missing from their life. What's the deeper value that is really driving them to do this? And then making that my goal. And then we have, the term they use in research a lot is the therapeutic alliance. Like, we just used to call it bedside manner, but that sounds better. And I think alliance is a really key word, because you can't have an alliance with somebody if you have different goals. Yeah. So having the same goal, going, right, we want to sort this out for you because you can't, take care of your grandkid on the weekends, and you feel like you're letting down your daughter who's relying on you because she has to work a lot, and you want to feel like a good mum and a good grandma, and that you're a, contributing valued member of your family.
Are you pulling this from people? I mean, I'm assuming that this has a lot to do with like the initial consultation or initial interview that you have with somebody. Is that where you're pulling a lot of this initially, or is it a combination of that and, throughout the time that they're a patient of yours?
I mean, it depends largely on the patient. So some patients, all you've got to do is be open to a conversation, and
I'll tell you everything.
Good questions, and come at it, like you say, with curiosity. Like, that's essential, curiosity, because otherwise, the answers. But if you can come at it with curiosity, some patients will sense that and go, you genuinely want to know about me, and open up. And sometimes they don't even know what their goal is. It's through that conversation, the history, they're like, yeah, that's what I really want. I just want to be able to relax in the evenings and not worry about this thing that's nagging. I didn't know that. So yeah, you might get that. Often when you get down to the deeper values, that's not necessarily something you're going to dig into. Most patients, when they've just met you, you haven't earned the right to have that conversation. They don't have that trust yet. Some people, like, you'll never get there, like your type A driver types who are just, I need this fixed, I need it fixed now. Not going to want to have deep conversations about their heart's desires and stuff like that. But it's sometimes, and often it will evolve through the course of care. So as they're feeling better, they're trusting me, they're starting to open up. They might go, yeah, I really wanted this, but actually now I'm thinking about the future. This would be an even bigger goal for me. So it depends, but certainly my main objective in the history now, yes, the diagnostic bit, the clinical bit, work that side of things out. But really where I put my focus is finding out, okay, what is this problem taken from them that they want back? Because if I can find that out, then we can start on a really good relationship, and we can have a transformational relationship rather than a transactional one where I'm just selling them expertise or selling them adjustments or that sort of thing. So if I can find that out, in the history is the prime time to do that, then I know, okay, we can get really good rapport, we can get really good trust, and I have a better idea of how to help this person get what they want. And I can use that to recommend things. If I think maintenance care is going to be helpful for them, if I think stretches, exercises, lifestyle advice, whatever it might be, is going to help them get their goal, I can recommend that. But I'm doing it to show them, look, this is what you want. I know what you want, and I want to help you get there. This is why I'm suggesting this. It's not because I want something different to you. And that to me, making that shift really, then it allowed this whole different dynamic and different relationship with my patients to open up.
Is there a way of getting better at that without just doing it? I mean, obviously, we can talk about concepts, and I'm sure that when you're working with chiropractors and stuff, you're talking to them about concepts and understanding some of this stuff. Is there a shortcut getting better at that, or is it just a matter of, going in and being with people and learning how to read the room and at least being better? Because some people are going to shut down, and some people are going to talk, and some people are going to talk too much, and some people, it's like, and being able to kind of read the room and understand when is it time to move on, or when is it time to kind of ask more questions. Is that just an experience thing, or is there some other trick to that?
I mean, there's a level of experience. You can not shortcut that, but you can fast track it by really paying attention. Really pay attention to the patient, because it's easy to get caught up in the whole diagnostic analytical brain chatter, but really try to look at that patient. Something I do, and I encourage people I work with, is I'll give them this, like a learning journal, and it just has a little journal they fill out during the day, and it just says, okay, what skill are you going to practice today? And then at the end of the day, how did that go? What difference did you notice? So being really conscious and deliberate with it helps. And also just getting to read different people. If you can spot, okay, this person might be more of a driver type, this person might be more of an analytical type. I love the social styles model. I think it's a really simple, really powerful model for just understanding how people communicate differently and how they need you to communicate differently. That, for me, I found that in my first year in practice, and that really, really helped. But I do think there's a level of, you do have to just keep practicing it. But deliberate practices, it's like adjusting. Like, you keep adjusting people over the years, you're going to get better. But if you don't really focus on it, you're not going to get that much better. But if you just like to deliberately go, right, really think about how I'm doing this. How did that go? Did it not work? Why did it not work? That, to me, that will shift things way, way quicker. I know when I've done that with my practice, deliberate focus attention makes a huge difference there.
My son was asking me about, I played basketball when I was younger, and he was asking me the other day about showing him how to do some things, because he started getting interested in it. And we went out, and I was showing him some stuff with how to put his hips and how his feet and how to hold his hands and how to shoot a ball. And within a matter of about 10 minutes or so, he started hitting some baskets, and he was really surprised by it. And I told him, I said, it's actually more important that you do it right than it is that you make it. Because if you're constantly doing the thing that you should be doing, that will ultimately equal doing it right, getting good results. Even if you're not getting good results, you're doing the right thing. you're going to develop a habit that's going to take you into a place where you're getting the results that you want to have.
Yeah.
If you just look at the result and you don't care how you got there, you end up just saying like, oh, well, it worked out fine. And you end up destroying people and you don't analyze the process at all. And it's a very
Yeah.
destructive way of
It's
kind
a
of going
very
about
Zen
improving.
thing, isn't it? It's like, if you don't focus on this, you'll get it, in the sense of like, don't think about the results will come. You got to focus on the and that's something that it's a key part of what I teach on the chiropractic, is this idea of, I call it being a chiropractic Buddhist, where it's like not being attached to the outcome. So I don't mind if my patients don't come back. And I don't mind if they don't get better. Now, I want them to, and I'm going to do everything I can to help them do that. It's not that I don't care, but I don't mind, meaning if they choose, if I explain the plan to them and they say that's not for me, if I can go home and go, I did everything I could for them in that moment, at that point in time, I go home happy. And if I see patients and every single person that day comes in and goes, whatever you did last time made me worse, if I can look at it and go, I did the best I could for them at that time, I can go home happy. Now, that's easier said than done. We all carry patients a little bit to some degree, but I think practicing that really, really can help, because you take a lot of the pressure and anxiety off your own shoulders when you go, you know, there's only so much you can do to help somebody get better. Some people just don't really want more than 1 or 2 cracks and hoping that's going to cure it. And like you say, if you focus on the results, you're going to beat yourself up when it doesn't work. When it does work, you're going to get all buzzed and high, but you're going to be on this roller. And I spent years on that roller coaster going up and down. Whereas if you just focus on the process and think about, am I doing what's best for this patient in this moment?
Yeah.
And am I doing it to the best of my ability? The results will come. It's exactly the same as your son. Just focus on doing it right. Don't worry if you make the shot there and then. But like he had to do, he had to stick with that, right? He had to stick with it and get frustrated and get out of his comfort zone, and probably wanted to give up a few times.
Yeah.
But if you stick with it, that's the difference between people who grow and people who stay in their comfort zone and don't ever grow.
That's one of the things I talk to people about all the time is about foundational principles. It's like, I consider myself a foundation layer when I teach, because I don't teach the sexy stuff. It's like when you walk by a skyscraper, nobody looks at it and says, oh, that's a pretty sweet foundation. It's like, but if the foundation wasn't there, the thing comes crumbling down. And so having that right and understanding some of the concepts that you're talking about and that we're talking about, understanding people, understanding the process. Like if you really focus on your fundamentals and focus on your foundation, you'll be able to grow that into whatever you want to grow it into. But if you're just looking at the shiny thing and you're kind of jumping ahead to, you know, I want this person to come in 20 visits and like, that's the goal. And you're not kind of working it back and figuring out what's best for this person. What do they need? Does this align with, you know, their life? Does it align practically? Like, what does it do? If you just jump ahead to the result that you want, it's really problematic when dealing with people, because you're not dealing with mechanical stuff. You're dealing with things that people that are alive, and they make decisions, and they may not make the same decision that you would make.
Yeah, that's that myth, isn't it? That, oh, if they just knew what we knew, they'd do what we do.
Yeah.
And that's the report findings, right? That's our chance to educate them and pour all this special knowledge into them to make sure they make the same choices we would. And it just doesn't work.
So tell me this, we're going to go a few more minutes. Tell me real quick about your thoughts in terms of care plans, especially for evidence-based chiropractors, because a lot of holistic chiropractors will do really huge care plans, and there's even a reputation in the community where like, oh, once you go, you always have to go. Like there's kind of that, and so I don't think that most chiropractors need to be told that like, hey, let's do like massive amounts of, you know, I don't like that. But the flip side of it is there are chiropractors that don't really recommend much at all. They're not really putting together any sort of plan for their patients, because they're kind of just,
let's see how we go, take a visit to visit.
Yeah. They think that being patient-centered is just playing it by ear. And can you just kind of elaborate on that a little bit? Cause it bothers me, because I feel like there's chiropractors and patients that are really missing out on what's best, because they're so afraid of being perceived as someone who's doing a year-long care plan and recommending 75 visits or something like that.
Exactly. I think the biggest sin that the evidence-based chiropractic world makes is that we allow our fears of not wanting to be like those other chiros to dictate care. And what we're actually doing, like, if I'm going to be blunt here, and this might upset a couple of people, we're putting our own egos in front of the patient's needs.
Yeah.
Because we're more concerned with how we look and not making them think X, Y, Z. We're more concerned about the optics than what does this person need. And patients need a plan, especially if they've had pain for a while. They do not like making it up as it goes along. And even if you have a plan in your head, if they think you're taking it visit to visit, they think you don't necessarily know what's going on, or they think you're not really evaluating this. So we do need to have a plan, and people vary on this. For me personally, if their goal is not to get rid of the pain, but their goal is to get something back in their life, my plan needs to get them to that goal.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily, the mistake that they make on the other side, the more vitalistic, big, long plans, is they go, it's going to take you a year to get there. Here's your schedule.
Yep.
Like, we can book you up for a year now. Like, I don't know what that person's going to need 3 months from now. I don't necessarily know what they're going to need 3 or 4 weeks from now.
Yeah.
But we can give them an estimate. I'll say to patients, you know what, to get you to this goal, it may take a year.
Yep.
Let's maybe start with the first 3 months. And in these first 3 months, I expect to get you 25% of the way there, or 50% of the way there.
Yeah.
And I'm not even necessarily recommending visits for those 3 months. I might say, let's start seeing you, X number of visits over X weeks, then we'll review it.
Yeah.
Then we'll make further recommendations. By that 3-month mark, I'm expecting this, but they may only leave booking a handful of visits at the start.
Yep.
But I'm letting them know this is what I'm expecting. This is the gist of it. Over those 3 months, you won't need to come in so often. We'll start to get you working on some strengthening work. We'll start to do this. We'll start to do that. Really, if your goal is you want to run a marathon and right now you've got an arthritic hip, yeah, it's going to take us a long time to get there. But we need to let them know that without feeling like we have to have all the answers.
It's interesting that chiropractors will, some of them are almost afraid to get it wrong, as if like I have to predict spot on exactly how many visits you're going to need over, whether that's 6 weeks, 6 months, 3 months, whatever. And it's so interesting that they don't feel comfortable just saying to a patient, this is the plan now. And if you do better than expected, we're going to see you less. And if you do worse than expected, we may see you more, and that's okay. It doesn't make anybody a failure. It doesn't make you a dumb chiropractor or bad chiropractor or something. It's just the reality of dealing with human beings and dealing with bodies.
Yeah. You only need to know what the best next step is now. Like, if you can think 2 or 3 steps ahead and go, right, if this works, we're going to do this. If this doesn't work, we're going to do that. Great. If you can think a step beyond that, great. But you don't need to have the whole thing planned and mapped. We don't need to have all the answers. And I think if we can take that off our own shoulders, that's where we can afford to become curious. And I think that's, like we said, that curiosity is really key, but we have to be open to maybe getting things wrong and not being the perfect expert in order to have that.
So I'm going to have to cut this off a little bit short. Why don't we do this? I will have you on another time and we will continue this conversation, because I actually had some other stuff that I wanted to talk to you about.
That'd be wonderful. Love to.
Let people know real quick how they can get connected to you. And before we get off.
Absolutely. So the best way to find me, I'm on Facebook. If you go facebook.com/patient-centered, I did a dumb thing and I used the English spelling, which is CENTRED. We skip out the E. But if you go to patientcentered.co.uk, it doesn't matter which way you spell it, because I bought both domains. That was a dumb move. Or if you just go on Facebook, search for Chris Chippendale. I'm pretty certain I'm the only Chris Chippendale in chiropractic. So you can find me there. You can find me on that website, or just shoot me an email. chrischippendale@gmail.com is the best way to get me. I guess you can pop that in the show notes. Or
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll get people connected to you. Hey, Chris, thanks again. I'm going to get off of here. We'll definitely do this again, and I'll talk to you again soon. Okay.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Joe. This is good fun.